Hello, this is Todd Luck, and this is a review of King Conan #1 from Marvel Comics. This is the new King Conan comic that just came out. I ended up with the variant cover. I thought it was a bit more interesting than the regular cover. It's a collage of various different images from Conan comics, Conan covers, shots from the interior, etc., etc. And it was just interesting. It looks nice, and I just really preferred it over the regular cover. This is the regular cover. It's so simplistic. I mean, there's just not a lot going on. It's just Conan, holding a sword with some corpses there and some cryptic eyes. It just doesn't really sell you on the book at all, which I think is unfortunate, but it could definitely be worse. This is the cover they put on Conan 300, which I also found on the shelf when I picked up my King Conan #1. And oh my goodness, there's so many things wrong with this cover. I mean, first of all, the faces blend in. We've got this weird expression on Belit's face. Her eyes look like they're half closed. The positions these characters are in are just ridiculous. I mean, that nobody in combat would ever be in a position like that. They're supposed to be looking like tough and cool, like they're ready to fight, but this isn't positions that make any sense for that. And Conan's is the worst. I mean, my God, he looks like he's taking a dump. Under what circumstance would Conan the Barbarian ever be in this position? The interiors on issue 300 were a lot better, and the short stories in here are pretty good. And actually, this is probably Conan 25, I think, but it's celebrating the 300th issue. I don't know. Modern comics are incomprehensible, but this was on the shelf. The same holds true for King Conan. The interiors are much better than the cover. Not my preferred art style, but it definitely gets the job done. It's mostly pleasant looking. It tells a story, and feels mostly appropriate here. Plus, this artist does really great splash pages. I mean, these just look really amazing. The story is by Jason Aaron, who did the initial run on the new Conan the Barbarian, and I had definite mixed feelings about his first issue there. It took him a while to figure out how to write Conan, but by the time you got to the third issue, he was kind of figuring out the territory. And so by the time we get to this, he's actually knows how to write Conan, and this is pretty well written, and it's exciting, and he is actually fighting Thothamon, which is fantastic. I love Thothamon to death. This would have been a major selling point for the issue, but for some reason Marvel didn't want this revealed before the issue came out. I don't know why that would be. It should have been in the solicitations. This is a major selling point. King Conan is just not going to appeal to that many people. I mean, I guess they were depending on Jason Aaron's name to sell it, but I think for those of us familiar with Conan, I mean, Thothamon is a huge selling point. He would make me want to buy this. So judging from how Jason Aaron wrote Conan the Barbarian during his 12-issue run, and the way they're talking about this 6-issue miniseries of King Conan, most likely they're going to use the same formula. It starts out with a big fight between Conan and Thothamon, and then most likely the other issues will be stories set in the past during his reign as king, and then they'll come back and wrap up the main story at the end. So there were a few things that took me out of the issue occasionally. So the opening is very well written. I love it to death. This really does feel like Conan. And then we get to the bottom of this page, and for this one panel, he just randomly is punching a buzzard. Feels like a Monty Python gag, but at least it's only one panel. And then there's this panel where Thothamon is doing this villain rambling, and he talks about he's going to wear Conan's innards while he lives, which I understand that. Okay, I understand that. And then he says, "I will wash myself with the drippings of your women." After a while, I figured he probably means washing himself in the blood of his women, maybe. my mind went all kinds of other places. I was just like, what is he washing himself in from the women? But the thing that caught me by surprise the most was when Thothamon said Conan had never seen him face to face. So in the original Marvel Comics run of Conan, obviously Conan did meet Thothamon. There were later novels of Conan written by people other than Robert E. Howard, because Robert E. Howard committed suicide at a relatively young age. Other folks took over the reins and had Conan meet Thothamon when Conan was king and had them fight. And even after they adapted that story, they also did their own original stories of Conan fighting Thothamon. So my grand confusion, and apparently I've gotten this wrong the entire time I've been reviewing new Conan comics from Marvel, is that I thought this was a continuation of what Marvel had done with Conan the Barbarian previously. Because if you look, they have legacy numbering on here saying that this would be issue 276, right? When they did their first new Conan the Barbarian #1. And obviously, I just showed you, they said this was Conan the Barbarian number 300, right? And then when you opened up that Conan the Barbarian #1, their first new Conan comic, since they got back the property, they had all these different scenes from old Conan comics in the story when it's, doing the whole, like, Lo came Conan, Reaver, Slayer, and all this stuff. Like, they showed the scenes from the old comics, which I assumed meant that they were continuing those old comics. When I got Savage Sword, Alex Ross was putting Marvel Comics Belite on the cover. Now, this didn't have anything to do with the interior, but I mean, it is the Belite from those old comics, right? On this cover, they use all these old Savage Sword issues. I'm assuming this is a follow-up to that original Savage Sword of Conan series. King Size Conan had a story by Roy Thomas that led into the original Conan the Barbarian #1 from the 70s. Christopher Priest wrote a story in Conan 300 that followed up not just on what Jason Aaron established in his Conan the Barbarian run of a couple years ago, but also what Christopher Priest had written in his Conan the King run back in the 80s. But I got that completely wrong. Apparently, the short stories by Roy Thomas and Christopher Priest, along with those covers by Alex Ross, were just, I guess, just kind of random stories told for fun. Apparently, this Conan the Barbarian that they're writing right now is different from this Conan the Barbarian that ran for 3 decades from the 70s to the 90s. And so, as I've noted in my reviews, I did notice that there were some visual differences when they would do flashbacks during this new run of Conan. For instance, when we show him as king, he would have a beard, which wasn't present in the old series. Thothamon would have different clothing. But I kind of chalk that up to either retcons or just that, these characters may have changed appearances at various points in their lives, right? Thothamon probably has more than one outfit in his closet. Conan may have grown a beard at some point when he was king. It was a very long period of time. However, that mention that Conan and Thothamon have never met obviously is a huge, huge change. That's more than just a cosmetic change. And so I looked through the stuff that I had, and I haven't made it all the way through Jason Aaron's run, right? I got the first half, and I have actually bought the second half digitally, but haven't read it yet. So I was skimming through that to see, if I could pick up any clues. Does he refer to any the old Conan comics directly? And what I found was, in the very next issue I hadn't read, he makes a direct reference to this miniseries, to this version of Belite. This is Age of Conan Belite, one of the new miniseries that they came out with. and it has a new origin for Belit that is unrelated to anything we've ever seen in the comics with Belit. And when I reviewed both this and Valeria, I believe that these were just self-contained miniseries that didn't have anything to do with the ongoing Conan, because I didn't think that they were rewriting these characters and rebooting them. Apparently they did. Apparently this is the new Marvel Comics version of Belit. I'm actually more confused, because why did they do these mini-series then? Because these characters don't appear in any significant way in the new Conan comics. Why in the world would they do mini-series reintroducing characters they're not going to use? Belit has appeared twice, and I guess in short stories, right? One in Giant-Sized Conan, or I'm sorry, King-Sized Conan, I apologize, and Conan 300, and I guess it's this version of Belit. It's kind of hard to say, but why would we do an entire miniseries just for 2 short stories? And so getting back to King Conan #1, if you're a Conan fan, I recommend trying it out, seeing if you like it. Me personally, I'm kind of leaning towards reading the rest digitally. I would buy it in print if I like the artwork more, but again, it's just not my preferred style on Conan. So I've been really lukewarm on this relaunch of Conan. There's been no direction to hook me and keep me reading. However, random Conan stories aren't always a bad thing. The black and white Conan magazines actually did just random stories, and they could have been from any time in Conan's life or with other Robert E. Howard characters. It was like a barbarian box of chocolates, and you never knew what you were going to get. But most of the time, it was quite tasty. This is Conan Saga. This is a reprint of older Savage Sword stories, and this is issue 18, and I actually read this last night. I'm a little weird when it comes to these magazines. I'll just, pick them up out of back issue boxes when I find them. I'll tend to get these covers by an artist named Earl Norham. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but he's amazing. He did a lot of Masters of the Universe art and does these amazing covers on the Conan magazines back in the day. And so I have a very, very random sampling of Savage Sword and Conan Saga. But I gotta tell you, most of the time I open it up and I'm blown away. So this issue features a 40-page adaptation of Tower of the Elephant with gorgeous John Buscema art. You've got absolutely gorgeous pinups of Conan art, and there's a story with Solomon Kane fighting Dracula, and there's this absolutely gorgeous adaptation of Solomon Kane's Homecoming, a poem by Robert E. Howard. And this is just a random issue of one of the Conan magazines. And I'm not saying they're all that good, right? I mean, again, it is like a box of chocolates. Some of them are going to be tastier than others, but quite frequently they were pretty darn good. And I would love to see Marvel get back to the point where Conan is this exciting and this good on a regular basis. And so that's all my ramblings. If you sat through it, thank you. Probably won't be doing too much on Conan in the coming year, unless something just, slaps me in the face. But, I do a lot of, as you can probably tell, I do a lot of Tarzan and Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff. And I also do some He-Man videos too. And just whatever tickles my fancy. So like and subscribe for more videos, and until next time, see ya.